The world is watching the clock. At 2:17 a.m. Eastern Time, President Donald J. Trump authorized a decisive escalation in the U.S.-Israel campaign against Iran, ordering a targeted military strike on the critical Kharg Island oil terminal. In a brief, direct address from the White House Treaty Room, the president framed the operation as a necessary move to dismantle Iran's economic lifeline and restore American security. The era of empty threats and failed diplomacy is over, President Trump stated. We are taking the oil money off the table. This is about peace through undeniable strength. According to initial Pentagon confirmations relayed to Reuters and CNN, the operation involved a coordinated wave of sea and air-based munitions aimed at disabling export infrastructure. Satellite imagery analyzed by private intelligence firms shows multiple fires burning at key loading docks. Iranian state media has acknowledged the attack, calling it a criminal act and vowing a crushing response. The immediate global impact was a sharp spike in oil prices, with Brent crude surging past $105 a barrel in early trading, a level not seen in over a decade. President Trump's rationale, delivered with his signature directness, cut through what he called the gaslighting of the international community. For decades, everyone talked. They negotiated. They gave away billions. And what did America get? More terrorism, more attacks on our soldiers, and a regime hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon, he said. My job isn't to win a Nobel Prize. My job is to win for America. Kharg Island funds the chaos. So we're shutting it down. The move has instantly polarized the global response. Key U.S. allies in the Gulf, including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, have offered quiet, behind-the-scenes support according to diplomatic sources speaking to the BBC. However, European powers are sounding alarms. A senior EU diplomat told Sky News the strike is a massive escalation that risks a regional inferno, urging an emergency UN Security Council session. Military analysts are divided on the strategic calculus. Jonathan Panikoff, a former U.S. national intelligence officer, told CNN the strike is a high-risk, high-reward play aimed at crippling the Iranian regime's ability to fund its proxy networks without a full-scale invasion. This isn't just about oil revenue. It's about regime credibility. If they can't protect their crown jewel, their deterrence is shattered, Panikoff said. But the POV from Tehran is one of fury and mobilization. In a televised speech, the commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, Hossein Salami, promised the attack on Kharg would be avenged in the Persian Gulf and beyond. U.S. intelligence officials, citing satellite movement and intercepted communications, report a noticeable increase in readiness among IRGC naval and missile forces stationed along the Strait of Hormuz. The financial markets are bracing for the next phase. This is just the opening act, said a senior commodities trader in London to the Financial Times. If even one tanker is hit in retaliation, you're looking at Brent crude going to $140. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's choke point, and President Trump just kicked the hornet's nest right next to it. Back in Washington, the political reaction splits cleanly down party lines. Senior Republicans have rallied behind the president's decisive action, with Senate leadership calling it a long-overdue enforcement of maximum pressure. Democratic leaders, however, are accusing the administration of recklessly embarking on a new war without congressional authorization. This is a constitutional crisis wrapped in a geopolitical crisis, said one prominent House Democrat. Now, all attention shifts to the Situation Room. Pentagon officials confirm the president is being presented with a range of follow-on options. The most consequential, a limited ground operation to secure the damaged facilities on Kharg Island and prevent their rapid reconstruction by Iranian forces. Proponents argue it would cement the victory and demonstrate unwavering resolve. Critics warn it would be a bloody quagmire, tying down U.S. forces in a hostile environment while inviting attacks across the Middle East. As dawn breaks over the smoldering infrastructure of Kharg Island, a single question hangs over every capital from Washington to Beijing: was this the masterstroke that forces Tehran to its knees, or the first, irreversible step into a wider war? President Trump has shown his hand. The world waits for Iran's move, and for the president's next decision. Will he double down and send in the troops? Washington, President Donald Trump has dramatically escalated the U.S. military commitment in the Persian Gulf, announcing the successful deployment of 25,000 Marines to the region and publicly demanding allied naval support to lock down the Strait of Hormuz, following last week's strikes on Iran's Kharg Island. The move, confirmed by the Pentagon in a late-night briefing, marks a massive pivot from targeted airstrikes to a sustained, large-scale force posture aimed at securing the world's most critical oil choke point. Defense officials told Reuters the Marine Expeditionary Force, mobilized from Camp Lejeune and pre-positioned ships, began arriving at undisclosed forward operating bases in the Gulf early Tuesday. Let me be clear, the free passage of global commerce is non-negotiable, President Trump said in a televised address from the White House. America is securing the strait. We are asking, and we expect, our allies to contribute their fair share. This is not just America's problem. This is a test of the free world. But the president's demand is hitting a wall of global resistance. According to diplomatic cables reviewed by the BBC and CNN, key NATO allies and regional partners are refusing to commit warships to a US-led naval coalition. A senior French diplomatic source told Sky News, "We are not signing up for an American blockade. This is a unilateral escalation. Our priority is de-escalation at the UN." German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, in a statement to Der Spiegel, called the Marine deployment a dangerous provocation and stated flatly that Germany will not be drawn into a military confrontation in the Strait of Hormuz. Japanese and South Korean officials, speaking on background to Nikkei and Yonhap respectively, expressed extreme concern but offered only vague commitments to diplomatic efforts. The POV from the Pentagon is one of grim determination. "The Allies are gaslighting us," a senior U.S. naval commander with knowledge of the operation told the New York Times on condition of anonymity. "For years they've cried about energy security. Now, when the guy who actually guarantees it calls in the chits, they're all playing Karen in the Situation Room. It's pathetic. The strategic calculus is stark." U.S. intelligence, cited by a former national intelligence officer in a briefing to Congress, indicates Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, has dispersed its fast attack boat fleet and coastal defense missiles. "They're setting the stage for asymmetric harassment," the officer said. "One mine, one drone boat, one missile strike on a tanker, that's their playbook. The 25,000 Marines are a tripwire and a response force, but they can't police 21,000 square miles of water alone. We need eyes and hulls." Financial markets are now pricing in the high risk of a disruption. Brent crude surged past $112 a barrel following the mobilization announcement. "The market is betting on an incident," a senior analyst at Goldman Sachs told CNBC. "The U.S. Navy is the world's best insurer, but with no allied backup, the premium just went through the roof. If traffic through the strait slows by even 20%, you're looking at $150 oil by the end of the month." Back in Tehran, the reaction has been predictably furious. IRGC Commander Hossein Salami, in a new speech broadcast on state television, mocked the U.S. deployment. "They bring an army to our shores, but they are alone," he said. "Their so-called coalition of cowards has abandoned them. Let their ships come. The Persian Gulf will be their graveyard." The political fallout in Washington is instant. While the president's base has rallied behind the "America First" stance, foreign policy veterans are sounding alarms. "This is the moment the post-war alliance system fractures," said a former U.S. ambassador to NATO in an interview with Fox News. "By going it alone, the president is telling every ally from Seoul to Berlin that American security guarantees are now transactional. You pay up with ships on the line, or you're on your own. That reshapes the world order for a generation. Now, all operational pressure falls on the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. With Allied decks empty, the Navy must stretch its Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and carrier strike groups to monitor every potential threat vector. We're looking at watch sections running on caffeine and nerve," a junior officer aboard the USS Mustin told Reuters via encrypted message. "The Iranians are going to test us. It's not an if. It's a when. And when they do, we'll be the only ones shooting back." The president has shown his hand, doubling down on unilateral American power. The world has shown its hand, refusing to follow. The Strait of Hormuz is now a geopolitical fault line, guarded by 25,000 U.S. Marines waiting for a signal, from their commander-in-chief, or from an Iranian commander with a thumb on the trigger. The question is no longer about winning a battle, but about managing a war alone. What price is America willing to pay for sole ownership of the world's economic artery? Washington, D.C., a MAGA civil war erupted in plain sight this morning as former President Donald Trump launched a scorched-earth defense of his top media ally, Mark Levin, and publicly purged conservative critics he labeled as disloyal, gutless pigs. The move, executed via a rapid-fire series of Truth Social posts, has ignited a fierce internal debate over whether the former president is consolidating his base or dangerously fracturing the broader conservative movement. The conflict ignited at 7:32 a.m. Eastern Time when Trump, responding to days of simmering criticism over his unilateral military posture in the Persian Gulf, posted, "The great Mark Levin has more intelligence and courage than all of the rhinos and fake news conservatives combined. He is a warrior for our cause, while the weak and disloyal Megyn Kelly and even Tucker Carlson, who I made, are nothing but backstabbers and losers." The post, a direct shot at two of Fox News' former marquee personalities, was followed minutes later by a second, "Anyone attacking Mark Levin is attacking me. It's that simple. We don't have room for traitors in our movement. #MAGA. The trigger for this internal purge was Levin's full-throated, days-long defense of Trump's decision to mobilize 25,000 Marines to the Strait of Hormuz without Allied support. According to a senior advisor to the Trump campaign who spoke to Reuters on condition of anonymity, the president was watching. He saw who stood with him when the entire D.C. swamp and media complex turned their backs. Mark Levin stood firm. Others, who built their careers on his coattails, chose to play armchair general. That's a capital offense in Trump's world. The targets of Trump's ire were swift to respond. In a segment on her SiriusXM show, Kelly fired back, "Blind loyalty to any one man is not conservatism. It's a cult. Questioning the wisdom of starting a war alone isn't disloyalty, it's patriotism." Meanwhile, sources close to Tucker Carlson told the New York Times the commentator was stunned by the public rebuke, having privately expressed concerns that the Iran strategy risked a protracted, economically devastating conflict with no clear exit. The public feud exposes a fundamental and widening rift within the right. On one side stands the Trump-centric America First wing, which views any public dissent as betrayal, especially during a declared national security crisis. On the other are traditional conservatives and libertarians who argue for debate and express alarm at the consolidation of power around a single leader's persona. Trump is conducting a loyalty test under fire, said Dr. Amanda Carpenter, a former GOP congressional staffer and author, in an interview with CNN. The message is clear: you are either with him completely, or you are an enemy. He's not just defending Levin, he's making an example of Kelly and Carlson to show every other commentator, donor, and elected Republican what happens if they step out of line. Data from social media analytics firm Graphica, reviewed by Reuters, shows a dramatic real-time split in conservative online discourse. Pro-Trump networks have amplified the disloyalty narrative, with hashtags like #PurgeTheRhinos trending. Simultaneously, traffic spiked on forums like The Dispatch and Bulwark, with users expressing concern over the movement's direction. This isn't about policy anymore. It's a purity spiral, one popular post read. The strategic implications are immediate. With the military crisis in the Gulf escalating, Trump's move is seen as an effort to present a unified front. He's clearing the decks, the campaign advisor said. In his view, you can't command a war with people second-guessing you on cable news. This is him asserting total command, not just of the military, but of the political narrative at home. Financial backers are now being forced to choose sides. A major donor who has contributed to both Trump and Carlson's ventures told the Wall Street Journal, "This is a nightmare. We're supposed to be focused on beating the left and securing the Strait of Hormuz. Instead, we're watching a circular firing squad. I'm pausing all contributions until this settles." As the Fifth Fleet stands watch in the Persian Gulf, the battle for the soul of the American right is now raging with equal intensity on the home front. Trump has drawn a bright red line, expelling influential voices from his camp for the crime of criticism. The purge may solidify his hold over his most ardent supporters, but it raises a critical, destabilizing question for November: is a movement that eats its own strongest, or is it simply running out of allies? Washington, D.C., the Trump administration's war on domestic critics escalated dramatically today as Federal Communications Commission Chairman Brendan Carr threatened to revoke the broadcast licenses of major news networks for disseminating what he called fake news about the Iran conflict, a move directly aligned with the president's fight against media dissent. In a statement released just after 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Chairman Carr, a Trump appointee, declared that certain networks were engaged in a deliberate campaign to demoralize the nation and undermine our commander-in-chief during a time of war. He cited specific segments from CNN and MSNBC that questioned the strategic wisdom of the Kharg Island strikes and the mobilization of 25,000 Marines. The FCC has a duty to ensure broadcasters operate in the public interest, Carr stated. Knowingly broadcasting false information that harms national security and endangers our troops is a clear violation of that duty. Licenses are a privilege, not a right. The White House publicly endorsed the move. In a press briefing, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said, "President Trump has been clear that fake news is a national security threat." Chairman Carr is showing tremendous leadership. When media outlets parrot enemy propaganda and spread defeatism, they are no longer a free press, they are a hostile entity. Legal experts were stunned. This is an unprecedented and brazen threat to use regulatory power to silence political criticism, said Professor Lawrence Tribe of Harvard Law School in an interview with the New York Times. The FCC has never revoked a license over disputed news coverage during a conflict. This is a direct assault on the First Amendment, using the fog of war as cover. The reaction from media organizations was swift and furious. CNN President Chris Licht issued a statement: "This is a blatant attempt at state-sponsored censorship. We stand by our reporting, which is factual, sourced, and in the public interest. We will fight this in court and continue to report without fear or favor." A senior executive at MSNBC, speaking to Axios on Background, was more blunt: "They're trying to gaslight the entire country. This is what authoritarian regimes do. Behind the scenes, sources at the networks tell a different story. A CNN insider told the Wall Street Journal that attorneys are preparing emergency injunctions, while network brass held a frantic call discussing whether to pull certain commentators known for sharp anti-Trump rhetoric off the air, at least temporarily. It's a chilling effect in real time, the source said. The lawyers are saying, fight, but the accountants are modeling what happens if we lose transmitters in Cleveland and Phoenix. The FCC's legal authority is murky. While broadcasters are subject to public interest obligations, revoking a license is an extreme, multi-year process. According to FCC procedural documents reviewed by NBC News, the Commission would have to prove the licensee committed a grave violation, such as fraud or consistent indecency. Defining fake news as such a violation would be a historic first. Let me show you the playbook, said a former FCC general counsel now in private practice, speaking to CNBC. They won't win in court. But that's not the point. The point is to create a climate of fear. It's to force networks to self-censor, to spend millions on legal fees, and to tie them up in regulatory hell for years. It's a political weaponization of the bureaucracy. POV, you're a news director wondering if your next segment is worth your station's entire business. Financial markets reacted immediately. Shares in parent companies Warner Bros. Discovery, CNN, and Comcast, MSNBC, fell by 4% and 3.2%, respectively, in midday trading. Investors hate regulatory uncertainty, a media analyst at Barclays told Bloomberg. The threat alone introduces massive risk into the broadcast model. The crackdown has ignited a fierce, fundamental debate that is now consuming Capitol Hill. Senate Democrats announced an emergency hearing. We will not stand by while this administration tries to silence the free press, said Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Meanwhile, prominent Trump allies in the House praised the move. Representative Jim Jordan, chair of the Judiciary Committee, tweeted, "Finally, accountability for the lying press. They've had it coming for years." But the division isn't purely partisan. Some libertarian-leaning Republicans expressed deep unease. Senator Rand Paul, Republican Kentucky, told reporters, "I disagree with CNN constantly, but the First Amendment isn't for speech we like. It's for speech we hate. This is a dangerous path." As the Fifth Fleet patrols the Persian Gulf, a new front has opened at home. The Trump administration, having purged dissent within its own political movement, is now training its sights on the institutional media. The FCC's threat may be a bargaining chip, a bluff, or a genuine opening salvo in a legal war. But its effect is already real, a palpable shift in what one network producer called the oxygen in the room. The question hanging over every newsroom, every broadcast, and every American now is stark. Is this a necessary security measure in a time of war, or an unprecedented threat to the First Amendment itself? The battle for the Strait of Hormuz is underway. Washington, the war for the Strait of Hormuz is now being fought on two fronts, as a spiraling domestic political and governance crisis threatens to undermine the United States from within. With a record wave of congressional retirements paralyzing Capitol Hill and a partial federal government shutdown entering its second week, the pressure on President Trump's administration has reached a critical breaking point. The shutdown, triggered by a deadlock over a supplemental Ukraine-Israel aid package that hardline House Republicans rejected, is no longer a theoretical budget fight. Its effects are now visceral and nationwide. According to data from the FAA and the Airlines for America Trade Group, staffing shortages among air traffic controllers and TSA agents have forced major airports in Atlanta, Chicago, and Denver to operate at 60% capacity. Over 8,000 flights have been canceled since Monday, stranding an estimated 1.2 million passengers. "We are operating on a skeleton crew," an anonymous TSA manager at O'Hare International Airport told Reuters. "The safety margins are gone. It's not a question of if there's an incident, but when." The travel chaos is fueling a firestorm of public anger, with frustration directed at both parties but increasingly crystallizing around a dysfunctional Congress. A new NBC News poll shows 72% of Americans disapprove of Congress's handling of the shutdown, with 65% blaming political infighting over national security needs. Social media is flooded with the hashtag #ShutdownStranded, featuring videos of families sleeping on airport floors and veterans unable to reach VA medical appointments. Compounding the crisis is an unprecedented exodus from the House of Representatives. As of Thursday morning, 47 representatives, 32 Republicans and 15 Democrats, have announced they will not seek re-election, a modern record for this point in an election cycle. The retirements include several powerful committee chairs and senior members, citing the toxic, unworkable environment. "I came here to govern, not to perform," said Representative Patrick McHenry, Republican North Carolina, the former Financial Services chair, in a blistering farewell speech. "This body is no longer capable of serious decision-making in a time of war." POV, you're President Trump, trying to command a global conflict while the home front collapses. The White House has attempted to frame the turmoil as proof of the swamp fighting back against his America First agenda. In a rally last night in Michigan, Trump told supporters, the alligators and the snakes in Washington are quitting because they can't handle the heat. They don't have the guts to finish the job. I do. We're winning against Iran, and we're going to win against these traitors here at home. But the political and logistical reality is far messier. The retirements have left key national security committees like Armed Services and Intelligence in disarray, unable to convene quorums for classified briefings on the Iran conflict. A planned vote on a streamlined defense funding bill to at least pay troops and reopen airport security failed by 20 votes on Wednesday, with the retiring members largely abstaining. There is no leverage, no coalition, and no leadership, a senior Senate GOP aide told CNN. The place is running on autopilot straight into a mountain. The administration's response has been a series of emergency executive actions that critics call a dangerous expansion of presidential power. Yesterday, the Pentagon announced it was invoking the Stafford Act to use FEMA funds and personnel to staff critical airport security checkpoints, a legally dubious move already challenged in federal court by the Government Accountability Office. This is a blatant end run around Congress's power of the purse, said GAO General Counsel Etta Emanuele Perez in a statement. Meanwhile, the economic toll is mounting. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates the shutdown is costing the U.S. economy approximately $3 billion per day in lost output. With 800,000 federal workers furloughed and another 1.3 million working without pay, consumer confidence has plummeted 15 points in a week, according to a University of Michigan survey. The central, unresolved question now hanging over the Capitol is whether President Trump's brand of steadfast, disruptive leadership can simultaneously navigate a foreign war and a metastasizing domestic crisis. His allies argue the chaos is a necessary purge. The system needed to break to be rebuilt, said Stephen Miller, a senior Trump advisor, in an interview on Fox News. The president is the only stabilizing force. His opponents see a nation at the precipice. We have a constitutional crisis layered on top of a national security crisis, said Senator Mitt Romney, Republican Utah. The machinery of government is seizing up. As Fifth Fleet commanders request clearer political guidance from a paralyzed Washington, and as stranded passengers riot at LAX, the pressure is becoming thermodynamic. Can the center hold, or is the pressure too great? The next 72 hours will determine whether the United States can fight a war abroad when its own capital has effectively shut down.